That makes Levi even more scary because his technique is impeccable. The man is a living buzzsaw, which only makes his traumatic paradigm for not dealing with his emotions even worse. Because that happens to people. When you find yourself in a position where you're avoiding your traumas and you found a way to do it that also makes you seem talented and successful in life, you'll just run full speed, butt naked, away from your traumas. Welcome to the Day Chaser podcast. I'm Charles.
And I'm Alex.
Today we're talking about Attack on Titan. Specifically, we're talking about, well, Alex, why don't you explain it?
Sure. So everyone knows, if you've seen any episode of Attack on Titan, you know it's about trauma. But everyone talks about it as the trauma of war, and that is valid, and the trauma of generational trauma, and that's great. But we want to talk more about how the Titans are a very good metaphor for how trauma literally rewires your brain and nervous system to only exist in a world of trauma, which hence leads to a world that is more conducive to making more trauma. It's a really good metaphorical language for trauma, not just a show about monsters.
That's how Alex and I began to see the show recently, that Attack on Titan is secretly a traumatic language, or at the very least an emotional language to explain trauma. And the main three characters, and possibly one or two key side characters, a really, really good example of that. But before we dive into the characters, let's just talk about the Titans themselves.
So the cool thing to me about the Titans, like I respect the whole arc with the name Titans, the Colossal and whatever, but I'm more interested, and I think frankly the show is a little more interesting when the Titans are just monsters, like the pure Titans as they call them, the ones that are caricatures of what the person looked like. They can't talk, they don't need to eat people, but they are just driven to do it and are unstoppable unless you take them out in a very specific spot.
Right.
So they're the personification of a body that is literally warped by inherited trauma, because there is a certain level for many people, not every person, but many people who might not even be bad people left untraumatized. But if you break them enough, they will become people-breaking machines.
Yes.
And hence we get generational trauma and, hurt people. Titan people make more Titans is essentially what I'm saying. And I just think that every aspect of the Titan, the pure Titan, is kind of a good allegory for trauma. Like, we got to get it in a specific part of its neck. Like on the one hand, you could read that as, to deal with trauma, you have to be smart about it. You can't just go, I will become a bigger monster. That's what Aaron tried and didn't work. You have to actually be tactical about it on some level. But also thinking that if you take out one Titan in that very specific spot in that very specific way, that the problem is fixed. But really, the world is still making more Titans. Like it's not, the flow of them is not going to cease because you think you have one extra tool, especially if the tool is like, it'll make all my trauma go away if I become famous or something like naive or self-destructive like that, or addictions and anything that can just become a further compound trauma like you and I have talked about and I want to talk about in a bit too. So I love the Titans as just this thing that will hunt you down for no other reason than it knows not what to do with you but eat you, and it doesn't even need to, it just does. So it feels almost scarily, pettily, cosmically unnecessary, and yet it is still the threat.
You brought up something super interesting just now that I didn't think about until you inspired it. That weak point on the back of Titan's necks, it reminds me of, I don't know if there is a term for this, but it would be like the delusion that people who experience pain, and often if those pains become trauma, of believing if I just deal with this one thing, then the problem will go away. That resonates with me a whole lot, especially when you think about the simple day-to-day of not being aware of your own pains, like being ignorant to the sources of your pains, which is frankly why so many pains become traumas in the first place. They kind of I don't know if germinate's the right word, but they grow inside of ignorance, inside of emotional ignorance. And And often
it's like a mold.
It's like a mold, and we oversimplify the pain because we're not fully well-rounded when it comes to a complete understanding of it, which that's also part of the issue with the Titans. A good chunk of the series is kind of on the mystery side of things. They had to investigate where the Titans came from, why they even exist, what their purpose is. Only after they got that answer were they able to truly deal with it. But at the same time, not every character dealt with the realities of their trauma, or having a full scope of the trauma didn't always lead to positive results, depending on the person, which again is exactly how trauma acts, or how trauma appears in real life. Learning a lot about what gives you pain doesn't necessarily solve the pain. You got to deal with that knowledge in the best possible ways. Which that leads me to another thing about the Titans that I really enjoy: the physical manifestation of trauma. I'm fascinated by the fact that when people talk about trauma, we primarily talk about it as if it's an internal experience. It's not something that happens. It happens to us, possibly from the outside, but it lives inside. Trauma quite literally is a rewiring of your nervous system, and your nervous system is a physical part of your body. Your trauma has a physical or physiological expression. It becomes a part of you physically. Those pains,
it's like when they call PTSD neurological injury.
Yes, because it is an injury. It's just the injury that, while the injury may feel like it's inside in an intangible way, it is in fact incredibly tangible. So when you see the Titans, to me, they appear as the personification of this particular physical manifestation of trauma, because trauma will mold you and shape you and frankly mutate you into something different, or at the very least it'll push you into the worst parts of yourself, or push you into a version of yourself that may not be motivated by the real you. It may be motivated by the pains that you have collected and been forced to not regulate or at the very least address.
And it could be the version of you, like, one of the things that fascinates me is when really nice people just hate themselves. Because you can go, you shouldn't, you're great, all you want. It's not working, because when they look in the mirror, they see a Titan's version of themselves. And that's not the truth, but someone convinced them enough times that was the truth, that you can help them, and they can ideally maybe scale back and reframe some things, especially with like CBT or with treatment and therapy. But like, you can't just go, you can intellectualize it in a therapeutic context, but you can't just be like, oh, just don't, you're great, just don't look in the mirror and hate yourself. Like, that's great, I never thought of that before. Never thought of that even once before, to go, oh, you know what, I see my reflection and I don't want to cry about my past. Just don't do that, just don't do it. Like,
that'd be like telling a person who involuntarily was forced to become a Titan to just turn back because they don't want to be doing it anyway.
Yes. And it's like, well, I don't think you're a person. I think you're still a nice person. Don't be a Titan. Like, you don't get it. Yeah. You don't get it.
And then
I'm gonna go chomp a village or something.
Yeah,
take exactly. Off of you.
Yeah, when you're in that state of mind where your traumas are ruling everything about your body, you do kind of become someone that consumes parts of other people's lives as a way to heal yourself. For some of us, most people, it's not very extreme. Like, we'll do the harms that we do to people will not affect so many people, or may affect a handful of people greatly. But there's some situations where people who are under intense trauma will also separately amass intense success, like a lot of success or wealth in life, but their traumas don't heal, and then those tools of wealth become an expression of trauma. So that's like the difference between your smaller Titans, which would be the everyday citizens that are hurt and hurting people without realizing it, to your colossal Titans, where they have so much on them. They have so many resources at their disposal that even their very presence can cause a massive explosion.
Yeah, I don't know if this is brilliant or the most 14-year-old boy thing I've ever said. What I'm about to say, trauma is like a virus that either it always latches onto a host and then it hopes to be passed on to another host.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Trauma does ideas are viral.
Yeah.
The ideas of there's a concept. Well, it's not a concept. There's a gene that scientists theorize that all human consciousness comes from. It's called the ARC gene. I forget what the exact acronym stands for. But anyway, the ARC gene, according to research, originated from an ancient virus, as did many of the things that make us human, originated from ancient viruses and eventually evolved into genes. Well, the reason the ARC gene is special is because when observed in the mind, as it creates neural pathways and things like that, it still acts like the virus it used to be.
Yeah, a rock sneezed and suddenly I can't shut up about Bob Dylan. The two endpoints of humanity.
That's how it works.
Thanks, Rock. You're ruining
Rock.
all my hinge dates.
I touched the smart rock and now I can't stop fixating. Now we gotta do podcasts just to deal with
The
life.
1965 and 66 tours couldn't be more different. Goodbye, pretty lady. Again. Goddamn sneezing rock.
Okay, well, so now that our listeners have a taste of what it is that we're thinking about in terms of this paradigm, let's break into some of these characters. Let's start with Armin. I have some thoughts on how I think Armin looks as a language for responding to trauma, but I want to hear your opinion first. What do you think?
So Armin, here's my frustration, not with Armin, but with a lot of people's read of Armin. I have talked to several people and they're like, who's your favorite Attack on Titan character? And I'm like, well, for pure hype swag is Levi, but for character development, it's Armin. And they go, why? I'm like, well, because he's the smart one, because he's afraid, but he reasons around it. And they go, I don't like Armin, he's a bitch. And I'm like, you don't get him then. He burned himself alive for his friends, which is way more noble than what Eren tried to do for his friends, by the way.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
I think it's because it's pure self-sacrifice. He murdered himself in an incredibly painful way.
Yes.
But he's this. They present him as the, oh, what are we gonna do, guys? Because it gives him the proper foible point, the weakness point, that when he does impressive shit, you're like, oh, he overcame his freeze response. Maybe in a way that doesn't kill the trauma, but it is definitely a healthier and more productive way than everybody else at least tries to deal with this stuff. And that's why he ends up being the strategist and why he deserves to be the one in charge. And right. But I also think it's cool to look at how like that can be the best ineffective way to deal with trauma is like, man, I've got the cutest ugly dog that it's still not good.
Yeah.
That sounded mean to dogs, but you know what I'm trying to say. Apologies for our dog listeners.
We like dogs on the Jay Chaser Media Podcast. We are a dog-friendly podcast. Unfortunately, we haven't had a dog as a guest yet, but we'll be sure to address that.
I've got a few dogs on Instagram that I'm obsessed with. We should give Huey a call. He lives in Austin. He's a French bulldog. I have merch with his face on it. I'm not kidding. Anyway, point being, he's got the best plan to deal with trauma.
Yes.
But it's still ineffective, and that's kind of like there's a poignancy in the best ineffective way to deal with something that is so bleakly all-consuming. So I love him as a freeze response, a kind of a character.
I really enjoy Armin because I relate to him the most. Just in my personal life, I've taken personal umbrage with my own ways of dealing with conflict, and only recently in my 30s have I been able to get some perspective on it, as I've like, for example, I joined a Jeet Kune Do school, which is exactly how I met Alex. We both do Jeet Kune Do, and I joined that school as a way to try and
I like to think a podcast will be better if the two hosts have choked each other at some point.
Oh, yes.
Because you gotta trust that man.
You gotta trust him.
Trust that man.
You gotta trust him.
If you don't, it's a weird class.
I joined that school so that I could figure out, like, because I'm the kind of person where when conflict happens, I start thinking. And when you're talking about like the different ways to respond to conflict, you got fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, which is, conflict happens, you either punch it in the face, you run away, you don't move at all, or you try to reason with it. Well, freeze appears in more than one way, apparently. Freezing could be, I'm so scared I can't move, but it could also be, I need to think my way out of this problem, but the result is the same. You're still freezing.
It's different than, because fawn is try to appease. Freeze could be like, okay, if I can just sit perfectly still and think, which is a very interesting reaction.
Yes, when I first started sparring at our school, I did that. I froze waiting for like the kicking pads and the tie pads and all of the drill stuff to come up, so I understood my options. I didn't know how to be in that moment, but I did find myself thinking about everything that was happening to me. But like Armin, I found myself in a position where, I was thinking, but that I wasn't using that as an escape from the conflict. I wanted to better connect to it. That was just my way of doing it. Which, in his case, he was a strategist on the show naturally, because at no point did he ever really want to avoid the Titans if he was in an unavoidable situation, but he absolutely wanted to understand them, because that was how he processed his trauma.
We have we say rationalization when you overthink to excuse. We don't really have a word for, I guess, intellectualize, when it's like, oh no, I know this is bad, but trust me, I can think my way out of it. And that is kind of often a fool's errand in its own way. But I don't know if we have do we have like a psycho term for that? I know rationalize, but you know what I'm trying to say.
No, I know what you're saying. I don't know if there's a specific one besides strategizing or intellectualizing. I mean, speaking as somebody who has a habit of doing that, anytime, and I've been through very like negative things in my life, quite a few, to a point where when I write my book, I might have to subtitle it, "Yes, all of this happened," because some of the stuff I've been through was just ridiculous. But in many of those moments, I found myself thinking about what was happening, because I didn't want to run. What I wanted to do was figure out how to survive. And that's what Armin does when he's facing down a Titan. And it made sense that he became a strategist. Now, the downfall of that is you can't think yourself out of every situation, and you have to stand up and act. But that's also why I think Armin is an amazing character and a great language for trauma, because he's not, from my perspective, and I'm most likely projecting, but he isn't a thinker directly. Like he thinks because that is a choice he makes, but if he can't make any choices, he adapts, which is what he did when he dealt with the Colossal Titan. Yeah, he was thinking about a strategy, but adapting to the moment where he had to sacrifice himself in that way to create the best opportunities for everyone in that fight, that also is a way to deal with trauma, where you adapt to the situation as best you can. The reason I say I'm projecting is because my first response to conflicts and trauma is adaptation. But the problem with that is that it's painful. You cannot avoid the pain when you choose to adapt, which is precisely what happened to Armin. Armin chooses to think because he's trying to outmaneuver the pain that comes with adaptation.
Is there such a thing as like adaptation intelligence? Like we talk about like emotional intelligence. Is that a term in terms of like how much do you go with like we talk about in Jeet Kune Do, like if you go, oh, he's gonna do this and I'm gonna do this and this and this and then I'm gonna go home. It's like, well, no, but what if he does this and then does a thing you've never seen before? Like you have to be able, we call it alteration speed. Like you have to be literally one of the 5 speeds of attack is knowing how to change if speeds 1 through 4 have proved to be the wrong answer to the math problem. Right. So it's like part of Armin's weakness is that he's a freeze and think boy, but part of his strength is he is the kind of freeze and think boy that does not go, but I solved the puzzle, and then gets, washed away. He will go, all right, new plan, if only momentarily, and that is arguably an even bigger strength to change your math mid-math, because you, and it also implies like an intellectual honesty that a lot of people don't have, because he will not go down with the ship. He will go, hey, the ship's going down. I guess my first plan didn't work, and he'll have a backup. He will switch in those moments. He, like you said, he's got that adaptivity that maybe the other characters like might have physically on a literal Levi going up a guy's arm, whatever level. But Armin has it in all in his skull, which is a much more interesting. It's not maybe as fun to watch, but it is a more narratively interesting thing to know.
Yeah, so as a paradigm for fighting, Armin is, especially if you compare Armin to Levi, like if you just took those two examples as a two spectrum or extremes on the spectrum as paradigms for fighting.
Levi and Armin, the two genders.
Yes. Levi would be fight with your fists or your blades or your body, physically fight. Armin is fight with your mind, which is a kind of fight where you use wisdom and tactics and data and thinking as a way to resolve conflicts.
Yeah, like we talk about strategy and tactics as part of the fighting kind of triangle, working your way up in Jeet Kune Do. It's like, well, strategy, you have to have a strategy, you have to have a plan, but a plan is math. How do you do it? Tactics, that's the physical manifestation of the math equation of how to fight someone.
Yeah, what I believe Armin teaches us is that you really need both. Because not every situation is going to present the same. You might be able to think your way out of a trauma. You might need to put some action and do something different to deal with your trauma. If your trauma is in the form of going no contact with your parents, it could be I need to send a number to my parent or send a text message to my parent formally blocking them and telling them why I'm doing this. That would be an action. A thought could be I'm going to block them and not go like super duper cold turkey, go no contact and not give them any kind of warning or anything. That could be a thought. There could also be a form of blocking your parent off from certain aspects of you emotionally. Like you no longer invite them into certain emotional zones that you have. You don't give them the level of intimacy that you would like to because they have
limited contact.
Yeah,
you the term.
You limit the contact. Yeah, you limit the contact. Instead of doing it physically, you do it psychologically by putting up a boundary that they won't respect if you explain it to them, but you do so for yourself, and then you circumvent their bad behavior by keeping them from having access to every part of your being. So, Armin can teach us a lot when it comes to strategizing inside of trauma versus, anything else or how other people tend to deal with it. And there's ups and downs to it from my perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. That leads to Mikasa. Or Mikasa? How would we... Okay.
I've been saying Mikasa, but I'm a dub watcher, so my opinion is worthless.
Nah, I watched the dub too.
For it, but I don't care.
So okay, for those of y'all watching this on YouTube or wherever this is that has comments, and I don't have no idea how you would even explain this in comments. How were we supposed to actually pronounce Mikasa's name or Mikasa? Because Mikasa sounds like I'm talking about a house. Mikasa sounds like a person, but I don't know.
I tend to go by what the dub says, but I have learned a few times, like on my other podcast, Children Jump the Shark, we watched Gundam Seed, and there's a character named Lacus. And then when we watched the newest Gundam Seed movie, they were pronouncing it Lacus, and I'm like, there's no way that's how it's supposed to be said. And yet the entire voice cast in English is doing it, so I was like, okay, I have a feeling it's not 100% success rate, but I tend to go with what they end up saying in English, and they say Mikasa.
By the way, shout out to Shonen.
Mikasa Sukasa.
Mikasa Sukasa. Shout out to Shonen Jump the Shark. That's Alex's other podcast. Definitely check that one out. They do some fun stuff over there.
Yeah.
But the whole, we're gonna get to her in a minute. I need to put this to bed. It reminds me of in The Lion King. How like in the live action, it wasn't live action, but like the CGI,
dead-eyed and photorealistic.
Yeah, right. The photorealistic remake where only one actor pronounced Zazu's name correctly, and the other ones they called him Zazu.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Watch it again. Watch it again.
Well,
and
I don't think I want to watch it again because it was kind of a fever dream, but I believe you.
Oh yeah.
I truly believe you.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely maddening. Anyway, Mikasa Ackerman. What did you think about her? Mikasa?
I was really sad when Mufasa died.
Mufasa.
Landmark sadness in my childhood. I love Mikasa because I think part of this, what I'm about to say, is Isayama does not write particularly well for women. Right. Mikasa just thinks about Eren. However, kind of like how I don't like Timothy Chalamet, but I loved him as Bob Dylan for the same reason I don't like him in other movies, is that he sounds like an uncanny valley human being, but so does Bob Dylan. So they're kind of the twain met. I think that in giving Mikasa only thinking about Eren, he's made a really good point about how she has become this crazy, fearsome soldier, but she has to do it, and why she did it is because she cannot handle the fact that she has to have her own identity apart from this kid, because he rescued her, or rather was there. I mean, he did rescue her. He knifed those two guys, which was a little much, but okay. They were traffickers. I think that was maybe called for. Yeah. In her mind, I would be dead or worse without Eren. So her brain just enmeshed with him, and he is my reason for being, which they dovetailed into a weird love story thing I didn't love, but I just like it on the level of she has to protect him at not only all costs, but literally all costs to her own autonomy and self-respect and self-actualization, anything.
Sure.
There is no, in her mind, there is no me without him. So he's not an abuser, but she is almost taken to him the way some abuse victims will to their abuser, in that they don't see where person I depend on for my mental well-being on some level, my stability, ends and I begin. She has lost herself to the mythos of this kid who sucks.
Yes.
And you just want to go, girl, you could do better. You seem so cool.
Yes, the enmeshment.
She's a great codependent character. And I don't know how much of that is just he don't write well for women, but here it works.
Yes. No, the concept of enmeshment response to trauma, where, like you said, you experience a traumatic event and someone becomes your safety, but the cost of it, if you are the kind of person who does enmesh, the cost of experiencing a person as safety is that your identity dissolves into that person and you become hyper-dependent, or codependent rather, on that person's existence in order to feel like you are real at all. And that's exactly what Mikasa does. It's very sad.
The cost of safety is your autonomy in that framework.
Yes, the cost of safety is your autonomy. If Eren dies, I disappear. And not even die, but disappear. Like, she existentially ceases to exist. She has made him
valueless.
Yeah, she has made him, like, if we think of the universe as the shell around us that allows our existence to exist, she has made Eren her universe. And if that shell shatters, then the protective layer that allows her to exist, it also shatters, and then she dissolves into this horrible void of pain and madness that she's surrounded by at all times.
It's like how there are plenty of cool religious people, of course, but some people are just like, but why would you want to, like, not murder people, and how would you get out of bed if there was no God? I'm like, because you just be nice and just things are as they are, and like they kind of can't understand that. They're like, but if there's no, it's like saying, but how would there be an earth without the sun? You're like, well, it doesn't have to be that way, and they just can't, they won't see it that way, because the thought of not having that safety, that thing to look upon, that thing to give to your identity, give your identity to, is so frightening. And I don't blame a lot of people like that, because a lot of them are quite nice people, but it's still, I would argue, maybe not the healthiest human impulse.
No, that's a good point. People do use religion as an identity coefficient. People will go to church because it helps them connect to themselves more, and they'll believe in. If they do, they'll believe in a God because it's their way of saying, I am real, I am here, I matter, I have value and meaning. Because unfortunately, many of us cannot assert that value on our own. I think many religious people, in a both a beautiful and tragic way, they feel the force of cosmic freedom more than everyone else does, where they feel the idea of, if there is no God, then there is no one in charge, and if no one's in charge, then I have no answers for how to be a person. I have no guidance. I have no anything. Like the freedom, the cosmic freedom, the fact that we are either alone, or at the very least alone in this belt of the Milky Way in the universe as an intelligent life form, can be terrifying.
Yeah, I exist on my own terms. It's like, my own terms?
Yes.
I don't know if I should keep going to my day job.
Right.
I can't decide what I do as a cosmic soul?
Yes.
What the
So they enmesh themselves into a deity. They have magical thinking. They'll find a religion or a god. They might religion hop. Sometimes people do that. Or they might have a situation where one religion betrayed them and then they still have a strong sense of spirituality. So they will have a loose relationship with temples or churches. Like that happened to, what's her name? Leah Remini. When she left the Church of Scientology, she said every once in a while she'll just go into a Catholic church and light a candle and do like a little meditative prayer to herself. It's not really about believing in a certain religion or a ritual. It's about confirming that she's real, confirming her identity. She's enmeshed in her own spirituality, which unfortunately is much healthier than what Mikasa, there it is again, what Mikasa does.
Jesus isn't a little fascist boy.
Jesus isn't a little fascist boy.
He seemed kind of cool. Aaron is not.
Aaron is.
And yet people seem to think he is. Looking at you, chuds.
Yeah, he's not. We're gonna get to Aaron. Definitely, we're getting to Aaron.
We'll get to fascist abs boy.
Yeah, but we should definitely observe Mikasa as the cautionary tale that she is. 100% do that, because I think especially like teenagers are super susceptible to this, because we're talking about a very vulnerable age where their identities are just forming. And as a result of that, and it happened to me, when you get a good, like a strong best friend or a girlfriend or anything, and you're living in a chaotic, traumatic household, your identity feels like it is under attack 100% of the time. And then you just want to find some space where you're safe. Often that's not a literal location. Not everybody has a youth center. Like, I grew up in the hood. We didn't always have the youth center to go to, or a positive place in our school to even go to, or a library or anything. Sometimes locations as a safe space were not accessible. So then people who treat you with the kindness that other people don't treat you with become safe spaces. But the red flag with that is that just because a person gives you the kindness that you're not getting elsewhere doesn't mean that that person is good for you, which is precisely why Mikasa's relationship with Aaron is bad. Because yes, Aaron was not going to traffic her as a little girl. He stabbed the two guys that were trying to do that to her. But that doesn't mean that Aaron was automatically a good person. But in her mind, that's what Aaron became.
Yeah, and then it makes her kind of this, like, ultimately she makes the right decision that it's not worth it. But you can tell in her eyes she's this close to going enabler at all times.
Yes.
Which is a dangerous thing when you have a soldier who is that good at kicking ass and chopping off heads, who can essentially be weaponized because they don't know. Like, we don't talk enough about how, and I'm not saying that Aaron was ever her abuser per se, but you know what I'm getting at, the person you were enmeshed with. We don't, in our culture, I think we don't talk enough about how we think of abuse as either someone yells at you or someone physically hurts you.
Yes.
Or worse, that I don't feel like alluding to, you know what I mean, physical or mental. But what we don't really talk about enough is how that's obviously really bad, but the greater sadness and attack is on is they attack knowingly or unknowingly, and often knowingly, your perception of what is real, so that those abuses can keep happening. It's kind of how, like, if you've ever talked to, like, the child of an alcoholic, they go, well,
which we both are, by the way.
Yeah. It's not just alcoholism isn't just they drink too much and it is killing their liver. That is a big part of it, for sure. But a big part of it, arguably an even bigger part of it, is what are they willing to do to get the stuff? And oftentimes it's burn every relationship, it's destroy anything that's between them and the bottle. And I'm saying this with compassion, like that is a sickness that needs to be helped so that a person is not driven to do that. I'm not one of those people that goes, oh, all addicts are criminals and they all suck. Even ones who can cause big damage can also find their way back. Great. So, point being, we don't talk enough about how being enmeshed with another person, whether they were your abuser or someone you have an unhealthy fixation on or whatever, it's not just about, oh, but if they like me, then I'm okay. It's about you have to, on a second-to-second basis, question, and you don't even know that you're doing it, question every one of your perceptions of who you are, who they are, who everything in between the two of you is, literally your perceptions of the air and the sky and how it relates to you. And you might not even know you're doing it. So that also has been thrown into question. Everything enmeshment does to a human brain is designed to not only make it the boundaries fuzzier, but to make the boundaries between knowing where the boundaries are getting fuzzier. So yes. You might go, like you can talk to, people would say to me, I don't talk to my mother anymore. And when people will go, you should not talk to her anymore, I would go like, I can't when I was younger, right. Because to me, it sounded a lot like, hey, you have your finger hurts. You should chop off your arm. I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right. It sounded absurd because I was enmeshed with this horribly abusive person. And to me, I didn't know where I began and she ended. And yes. That's one of the big tragedies of what this type of and like I said, their relationship is a little different because he's not actively abusing her. He is this sort of false idol for her.
Yes.
But point being, when you decide that, I'm not saying decide, but, when your nervous system has decided, has trauma bonded to another person, it brings you to some scary places because you might not even question how much of yourself you have given away. And that is so tragic.
It is the thought forms of an addict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Yeah. Rather than being addicted to a drug or a substance like alcohol or even like, a pharmaceutical drug like oxytocin or something like that, her brain was primed for addiction, but the addiction that filled that seat came in the form of a person. She's addicted to Aaron and his presence. And if you've ever had addicts in your life, even addicts who have recovered, sometimes what doesn't go away is the way an addict will think when it comes to getting the thing that they want, when it comes to this sudden burst of ambition that they seem to reveal. It's kind of this broken kind of I need to get this thing right now, because that's how their brains have formed when it comes to getting the things that they need or getting the things that they want.
Slam the button energy.
Yeah, it becomes slam the button energy. And Mikasa, I think part of the reason she can fight so hard, granted, yes, there's the canon of she's an Ackerman, and as a result of being in that bloodline, she's a part of a bloodline that's, bred to be horribly efficient soldiers. There is that. But as an Ackerman, she has an inner motivation that comes from her addiction to Aaron, because if Aaron dies at any of those battles, she dies existentially. She loses all sense of meaning and hope and everything. So yeah, she's probably fighting for Aaron's life and only proxying in her life as a result of being a weapon. Like a gun never worries about losing its life because it's a gun.
And the tragic thing about, I'm very interested, like we were talking about how trauma rewires your nervous system and your emotions. It's so interesting to me what kind of, like someone who has been enmeshed with a toxic person or just someone who's not good for you, whatever, how that person's emotions kind of group around that feeling to make it feel like a noble impulse. And I'm not saying like, oh, you're lying to yourself and you're doing something bad, but like your brain has to on some level go, I'm okay, right? I'm doing okay. And like in my experience, trying to get the attention and love from a person who was not consistent with it on purpose because they lived to hurt people. I had, and I've only gotten over this really recently and only really cognize it, this feeling that what love was to give to the point where you have nothing left to another person. That is the noble sacrifice. And what I'm really starting to learn now is yes, love is earned by authenticity. It is not earned by giving everyone until you are a skeleton that turns to dust.
Yeah.
But my brain had to poetize it, or whatever you want to call it, make it romanticize it, going, oh yeah, well, my brain can't go, hey, you know how we think love is conditional because it's a constant audition to not be put in horrible psychic pain? My brain had to go, oh, you know what? I just love to give, and I care about this person. I just want to give them everything. And every one of those words has a very toxic quotation mark around it, because I did not realize that in my mind, love was shrinking yourself.
Yes.
And I had to go through a few pretty gnarly heartbreaks because I replicated that response in other people. But, you know, learning that you have to break the cycle of if there's no them, then who am I? Because the answer is you're still you. And if they go away, that is honestly the beginning of you healing. It's gonna suck. I went through a real bad heartbreak really recently that you've had a front row seat for, which I very much appreciated. And the best way I can describe how it felt emotionally, two ways. One, did you see the second Wolverine movie?
X-Men Origins?
No, the one after that.
Oh, the Wolverine, where he went to Japan and had that no chemistry relationship with that woman.
Yes, he did. Did you see that movie?
Yeah, I saw it.
So you remember the opening when he rescues the guy from the atom bomb blast in World War II?
Yes.
And he throws him in that thing, and the guy comes up and looks, and Wolverine is he's like all muscle and nerve and just horribly burned and then grows back. That's how it's felt to get over this heartbreak I went through. It's like, and the other way I would describe it is like, once all that was gone, it was like I had to stand in the rain with no skin until it all grew back. It was horrifically painful, but it was the only way that I was ever gonna properly heal. And I'm still not fully over it. It's real fun when I have a few drinks, let's say, but it is for the best.
I think your emotional journey, especially your recent one, has some parallels to how Mikasa's journey went. Because
absolutely.
In doing what she did to Eren at the end, that was her way of not only claiming agency, but at the end of the day, she gave herself the chance to heal by breaking her own emotional pattern. And it's like the concept of the empty cup. Like when you're talking about love for other people or self-love and all the ways that love can appear, sometimes you'll find yourself in a position, or you may become conditioned to believe that emptying your cup into somebody else's cup is the ultimate expression of love. But the reality is that you can't give anything to anyone that you yourself don't have. It's like what RuPaul says, like, if you don't love yourself, how the hell are you gonna love anybody else? It's a very clever thing that it was not that clever, but she says that, but like when you really dive into it and you understand it just on a mechanical level, you realize, how can you give love if you don't have love? Like, you can't give everything that you are to someone else. And if that person is taking it, then and they're not giving anything back, then you're pouring it down a drain. That person doesn't have a cup. They're just they're an empty well. And that's what happened with Mikasa and Eren. She
basically had to kill her entire brain's concept of love to save the planet.
And then build a new one.
Horrifically painful, but necessary.
Yeah, and in fact,
for everybody.
That's true. And honestly, we don't even get to see her build a new one because the story's over at that point. Attack on Titan is done.
I think it's implied in the little extra like credit stuff that that she got married and visited his grave.
Oh yeah, right.
It's implied to be but I don't feel like giving him extra credit because the ending sucks. But
yeah, we get a taste of it, but you know, it's better.
We don't see that Stella got her groove back of Mikasa. Really.
Yeah, like how Mikasa got her groove back. Like we didn't get that. I would love to see Mikasa got her groove, man.
That too.
Nobody, please. Okay, somebody out there is thinking.
Figuring a hinge.
Somebody out there is thinking, I'm gonna make an AI version of how Stella got her groove back and replace all the scenes with Mika. Don't do that. Leave Angela Bassett's career alone.
Now, if you want to draw fan art of it and send it to dayhistorymedia@gmail.com, you get on that. But
absolutely,
you leave AI out of this.
Absolutely. If you make a fan poster where it's me, an Attack on Titan version of how Stella got her groove back, 100% do that. Email it to us. What's the email again, Alex?
daychasermedia@gmail.com. How Mikasa got her swords back?
See,
or do we want to keep it groove? Let's workshop this.
Well, I mean, she was cutting grooves in the Titans with her swords. Look, however, make it work. However you can make it work. Make it work. And if you do it, we'll feature it. We'll put it on the website. We'll put it on the.
Yes,
when we get a website, we'll put it on the. We'll put it on the YouTube channel, whatever it is. That being said, speaking of one Ackerman, let's move on to the next Ackerman, probably the more famous one. Good old Levi. What does he teach us about dealing with trauma?
So Levi is a really interesting character. Because it's super fun to just watch, like Mika said, it's super fun to just watch him be the best at what he does.
Yes.
But he also has that kind of, that poignant air of, Bud, this isn't going to actually fix the screaming in your head. Mm-hmm. Like, you can be the best soldier, you can be the best singer, the most famous guy, whatever. It's not going to make... like one of my favorite movies now is Better Man, which is the Robbie Williams biopic where he's a monkey, and he's such a fame hound. I need to be huge. I need to play Nebworth with 125,000 people. Really, he wants his dad to stick around. That's all he really wants, but he can't. His dad won't, so it gets projected onto literally the planet. So Levi is fun to watch because those action sequences are so rad. But also, he's got the soldier's problem, which is, oh no, you see, if I just am good enough at my job, if I just take out enough enemies, that will make everything okay. And by definition, if you are always externalizing your pain, you will never actually conquer your pain because it lives. The call is coming from inside the house, Levi.
Yes.
You can't kill. Even though the Titans are metaphors for trauma, and they bring out how you react to trauma, and that you have a split second to deal with them, and says a lot about you, they are not your trauma. They are making it worse. They are not what's going on in your heart. The problem is you are a street urchin who is taught to kill. And none of that is going to go away if you just kill a lot of monsters.
No, it will not. You can't kill your way to that hug, Levi. You can't do it.
Titan guts will not hug you.
No, they're too smelly, first of all, and they're enormous.
But I don't think that's what you want.
No, you don't want that kind of warmth.
I thought these things smell bad on the outside.
Levi reminds me of, I guess the term on the internet now is gym cells, where you'll see...
He is a gym cell!
He is a gym cell.
Wow.
Levi,
I never thought of that before.
Levi is the kind of male or masculine identifying human being who cannot emotionally process or cannot process his emotions on his own, so he retreats into toughness, into masculinity, to a point where his masculinity goes toxic, and he never really resolves the pain, because from his perspective, yes, he is in pain. No, he doesn't have the tools to resolve it, but it doesn't matter, because if I can claim ownership of the pain, then the pain cannot claim my life, because the pain now belongs to me as opposed to me belonging to it. And in the real world, this translates to, you go to a gym and there's a person who is very, very muscly, and usually a guy, or sometimes it's they're like, the gender really doesn't matter, but they're sitting there working out, and if you look in their eyes long enough, you realize, oh, every time they lift, they're sucking tears back in, because if they stop lifting, then they'll start crying, and part of them thinks, well, I can't cry in the middle of this gym. That would be strange.
So I'll just have a 1,000-yard dead-eyed stare. That won't make anyone uncomfortable.
Right. But interestingly enough, they feel the same way when they're at home. And some of them do let themselves cry, but none of the tears are enough to resolve the pain. And that is equally sad. I very much feel bad for those people. A lot of them get pipelined into the manosphere. I genuinely hope that many of those people get out of the manosphere and deal with their emotions. Get some therapy, talk to somebody, start hugging somebody, do something. Because this ain't, you can't lift your feelings. There's no weight that will feel as heavy as the pain in your heart. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my deadlift is quite good, and I'm not amazing by powerlifter standards, but like for me, it's my strongest lift where I can literally lift a little bit over my own body weight. So I love to go like, oh, it's good, comes in handy if I ever have to pick up me. Now imagine if I meant that with deadly seriousness. That's a gym sell.
Yes. Yes.
I mean it like, oh, it's funny if I ever had to pick up the clone. Whoa, I can do it. It was like, no. I'll just keep deadlifting, and my hamstrings will make my mom love me.
Yes.
Nobody.
No.
I wish that was how that worked too, but it's not.
The hamstrings won't make your mom love you. It won't happen.
No.
That's not how it works.
And your technique is trash. I don't know how to broach that topic because you're very scary, but...
Speaking of which, that makes Levi even more scary because his technique is impeccable. The man is a living buzzsaw, which only makes his traumatic paradigm for not dealing with his emotions even worse. Because that happens to people. When you find yourself in a position where you're avoiding your traumas and you found a way to do it that also makes you seem talented and successful in life, you'll just run full speed, butt naked away from your traumas, like ass out. Like you will not deal with it at all.
I think you're reading some kind of fanfic porn about Attack on Titan without meaning to. But
what I do in my own time is my business.
It's ass out on Titan. That's the Charles. Now get that poster to Jay Chaser.
Get that poster.
Please don't. But it's like what I was saying about how your brain, when you are traumatized, or especially when you are pursuing an unhealthy or ineffective attitude toward trying to fix your trauma, your brain has to romanticize it.
Yes.
No one is more dangerous to themselves, at the very least, than a traumatized person who thinks that is fuel for their particular skill they are great at.
Ooh.
Like, it is a bad type of person that goes, they're like a stand-up comedian or something. They're like, I have to be miserable, I won't be funny. And it's particularly fucked up if they're also very funny, because you want to go, dude, when I did comedy for a while, and I don't do it anymore because I got better, but when I did it, I was...
You mean emotionally better?
I did, yes.
Yes.
I did. When I was happy, I was so much better at comedy. And I just wanted to go, does everybody not realize how good this happiness stuff is? Like the chunk I would always close on that was my strongest, I wrote when I had a girlfriend and I was over the moon in love with her. And it stayed strong because I wrote it from a place of earnest joy. Yes. And only one joke was about her, but point being, I wrote it at a place where I was so emotionally, constructively cared about that I radiated productivity in the healthy sense, in the constructive sense. And so that's great, but some people go like, they become like misery addicts, and they're like, I just never. What would I've heard with someone once go, what would I do if I was happy? And I was like, that's a terrifying question to ask.
It is,
because it should have an easy answer, but some people it doesn't. But so, yeah, Levi, like he thinks that he is the ultimate warrior. I don't remember how much they go into this in the show. I'm sure on some level he's one of those, all my scars help me hold this blade. He's that kind of a guy.
Yeah, he's that guy. He never really says it, but it's all in the eyes.
Yeah, it's all in the eyes. And so, which is kind of ironic because he loses one of them by the end of the show. But it's a really unhappy mind to live in when you think, or you have been coaxed or forced to think, that all your trauma is why you're successful.
Yes.
And it's especially self-destructive if you are also incredibly successful. Because then you have physical, tangible feedback proof that you're good at the thing. And if you've convinced yourself that I'm only good at the thing because the lambs will not stop screaming, then you're going to find a way to keep listening to the screaming lambs and not actually fix your trauma. And so
Vegeta went through a similar thing in Dragon Ball Z, but he arced where Levi did not, because with Vegeta, he had the trauma of basically having a deadbeat dad and having his entire civilization genocided in front of him, and then being forced to work for the intergalactic racist that killed his entire family and the majority of his people. He dealt with that trauma by getting stronger at what he did. And then he ran into Kakarot, Goku, and realized that his paradigm for dealing with trauma was not the ultimate way to deal with life. There was another way. And then when he finally wanted to go Super Saiyan, what did he say? He said he stopped caring about Kakarot. He stopped caring about wanting to go Super Saiyan. He let everything go. And the experience of finally letting go of his original motivation is what let him reach the next level.
Yeah. I just realized this now. Have you seen the movie Amadeus?
No, but it's on my movie list.
We should watch that because it's great. It's about a composer who hates and is jealous of Mozart.
Yeah.
Because Salieri is this composer. He's worked every inch of himself to the bone and made deals with God, make me a great composer. And then this weird little fucking jackass who makes fart jokes all the time shows up, but he's Mozart and he's just writing poetry and he's just like, what the fuck is wrong with it? But everything Salieri writes is mid because he's not that great a composer. It's a little different from Vegeta. If I'm being honest, they're more like Hamilton and Burr, but you don't want to get me started down that avenue.
We'll do an episode on Hamilton.
We'll do an episode how Vegeta and Goku are Hamilton and Burr in that show. But so point being, he is Vegeta. He's one of those guys that he is rationalized in his trauma, but I'm the Prince of all Saiyans. I've got the blood that makes me destined to be the best. Yes. And then he meets this guy who's herp-a-derp-a-derp. I love to eat thousands of pounds of ramen in a single sitting. And he's like, why? because it's not a good way to deal with your trauma. It's kind of like, you know the band Megadeth?
Oh, yeah.
So Dave Mustaine, he was fired from a band before he first started Megadeth.
Fired from Metallica, before Metallica became Metallica.
Yeah, so he's fired from Metallica, and he says, I'm gonna fucking beat those guys, was his motivation. But then those guys became Metallica. Yes. So no matter how much success he got, it was never enough.
Right.
And that's how not dealing with your trauma by doing something that is essentially unrelated, but you have convinced yourself is either fueling your skill or dealing with your something that is unhealthy link is never going to be enough.
No.
There's never going to be enough Titan next to slice Levi. Levon Helm from the band is deadly with weapons against Titans. But point being, there's so many ways to poorly deal with your trauma. And everyone does them, particularly Incel Abs Boy. Ready to talk about him?
Oh, the big old Titan-sized rumbling elephant in the room.
Tyler Durden of anime, apparently, in that everyone misunderstands the point.
Let's unpack this boy. Let's unpack Aaron.
Yeah.
Let's see what we thinking about Aaron, because I got two hot takes on this boy, but I want you to go first.
So here's my maybe hot take about Eren Yeager and about Attack on Titan as a whole. I think the reason why I don't write off Attack on Titan, a lot of people go, it's fascist propaganda. And I don't think so. I think Attack on Titan is undeniably a conservative show. It loves the military and yet gives them very theatrical outfits, which I kind of appreciate. But it's very much about might makes right. But it's not, and its main character, Eren Yeager, is a fascist. Yeah. He becomes Monster Hitler at the end. He literally has the Jaegerists, which are very much similar to, like, you know, Franco's goons in the Spanish Civil War. I was reading about the fascist attempted coups while I was watching Titans, so that kind of gelled for me at the time. Yeah. It feels very fascisto, you know.
It's anime QAnon.
Yeah, in a big way. And so, but here's the but I think that the cool thing about Titan is that Eren was always the protagonist. He is, I think, even to the end, kind of the protagonist.
Yes.
But because he's cute and because he's protag-coon, you let a lot of stuff he says that's sort of troubling go as he's rambunctious. And then by the end, when he has bloomed into this colossal genocidal monster, at least I went, huh, he did say a little bit Nazi-ish stuff the whole time, didn't he? Like, we won't be penned in like cattle and slaughtered. I'm like, that's a little Lebensraum-y. He kind of talks like a Hitler Youth, but because you like him, because television has conditioned you to like the point of view character on some level, you let it go. So I think the brilliant thing about Attack on Titan, at least from a narrative standpoint, is it is never Trump the anime. It fully knows that Eren Yeager is a fascist, even though it is a more conservative. Me and Isayama would not vibe as a couple. Me and Shinichiro Watanabe would probably get along. Me and Isayama, maybe not so much. But Isayama, I do not think is a fascist. So I think it is unfair when a lot of leftist anime fans go, oh, it's a fascist show. I'm like, no. The protag is a fascist, but the show knows that that's bad.
Yes.
So, point being, a lot of people, and I'm more annoyed at these people than the last people I mentioned, a lot of gym cells probably think Eren Yeager is cool and based and rad because he has a ponytail and abs. I'm like, so you just missed like the whole point? Like the whole point. I'm not saying his abs aren't great. The man's got abs. He's got a six-pack, but he also has a body count.
How unfortunate the parallels of people being duped into fascism by having a charismatic man with abs talk them into it. Oh my. It's good that doesn't happen in real life.
Frankly, it's good that more fascists don't have abs. Like,
I mean, for real.
That would make a statistical difference in human suffering. I hate that that's true, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen all those like weird fascist paintings of Trump, but he's like really muscly?
Yes, they're very strange.
Because part of fascism is fantasy, and so they have to imagine him as giant, roided up monster. And I'm like, but if he really looked like that, we'd be in fucking trouble. Rogan's got abs.
Rogan's got abs. I mean, his abs look like a beer keg. They're awful to stare into.
They're not great abs.
No.
You will get no argument from me, but they do exist.
They do exist. Dana White has abs. Is he a fascist?
Whatever. Definitely. He's a manosphere guy.
Oh, yeah, right. There you go. So, yeah. Oh my God.
Theo Vaughn, please don't get abs.
Don't.
You're
don't
already hurting enough.
Yeah, no, it's all. He's already in a bad place.
Bernie gets some abs.
Bernie gets some abs. I know you old. So what? What you doing right now? You probably already have abs because you yelling all the time.
Takes a lot of diaphragm strength.
That's a core workout.
Yeah,
there are pictures of you with Selma. That is a core workout for your ass. You was walking with Martin Luther King.
The core strength it must take to be ready to fight off cops in Selma, Alabama.
Goodness.
That might be like Enter the Dragon abs.
Jeez. My God. Talk about a deadlift. Anyway, here are my two hot takes on Eren Yeager. I'll start with the easier one, which is possibly the darker one. You know what? Actually, I'll start with the second one, which is not as dark. I don't believe Eren Yeager had one trauma. I believe he had two traumas. Allow me to explain. Yes, the initial trauma that the show tells you to pinpoint, to highlight, is the trauma of Eren seeing his mother be devoured by a Titan. Sure, that's definitely it, 100%, and it is one of the things that motivates his horribly fascist views of the world. 100%, that is definitely a trauma. I believe his second trauma was being turned into the attack Titan against his will.
Yeah, he did not consent to what his father did.
No, he did not consent to what his father did, and that power was thrusted upon him without any kind of mentoring, no kind of understanding on how to wield that power with responsibility. What happened to him is the equivalent of if Uncle Ben did not die for Spider-Man, and all Spider-Man had at that point was a bunch of power and an angry streak from high school. If Uncle Ben did not contextualize having power for Peter, he would have become a villain.
Yeah.
Eren did not have an Uncle Ben moment when he became the Attack Titan. Nobody contextualized having that power for him. So he ended up taking the trauma of becoming a Titan and compounding on it because he had no emotional context or emotional tools in order to use the attack Titan in a reasonable way. So it ended up making him even more of a fascist, because it was like suddenly has all this power. Well, what happens to somebody that has a bunch of sudden power that you know, maybe they earned it, maybe they didn't, but not the point. They didn't have a good amount of emotional intelligence to regulate what power does to a human being. It will corrupt them.
Yeah, he experienced an unfathomable trauma at a very young age, and then maybe I forget how long, but maybe a couple weeks or a month later, was given the seeds to become the most special person in human history.
Yes.
There is no version of this story where that person does not become broken.
No, there's no version.
It's too much to put on somebody.
Especially a child, first of all. He was a kid. He's what, 10 when the show starts? Yeah.
He's young.
And he gets into the military before he's legally an adult. All of this stuff is happening to him inside of a window of 5 to 8 years. That's an insane level of personal and familial change. That is warping the hell out of his brain. And these are formative years. He is prime for having trauma and developing some horrible belief systems. He's right in that awful pocket.
And it's like we were saying about how believing that your trauma feeds your greatest skill. It's really dangerous when someone has a greatest skill. He is the attack Titan. He's getting more Titans. He's going to be, and so, spoilers for the end of Attack on Titan. He made it so through time travel that he would have to. He sent the Titan to kill his own mom, so he'd have to see it. So he is in a feedback loop of his own making to make himself the most powerful person alive. Meaning he is fully aware of his trauma to the point where he's like, oh yeah, but I need it to do the thing.
Yes.
And so the autonomy and the agency of how much he's at fault become very blurry because the paths don't make a lot of sense. But point being, he is completely dead set on creating and maintaining the trauma that makes him the big monster at the end. He is fully cognizant of it and aware of it to the point where he makes it happen to himself.
Yes.
And that is really, really bleak.
Yes, it is very bleak. And it really comes out. I mean, most people would say it comes out in the end with the Jaegerists and all of that stuff, with the long hair and the abs. But when it really starts to rear its ugly head is when he sees that ocean.
Yeah, because it's never enough.
It's never enough. It's like, dude, you've been fighting Titans. You've been dealing with killing other humans who tried to kill Mikasa. What is the issue? It's like the issue is that he is an angry boy that is so full of rage that he needs something to hurt. That's really what it is. Yeah. It stopped being about the Titans a long time ago.
Did you ever read On the Road by Jack Kerouac?
No.
Okay, don't. It's a majorly overrated book, to the point where when I read it, I hated it so much I threw it out my window. It landed in the street. I saw a woman pick it up and throw it further into the street. So it's about Jack Kerouac taking a road trip to one end of the country and back, and there's a moment in toward the middle where he gets to, I forget which coast. I think he started in New York and goes to California. He gets to California, which was the goal, and then he's just like, I don't know, turn around, and he just turns around the other way because it really was about the continued motion.
I see.
And so imagine if Jack Kerouac got to the ocean and didn't say, let's turn around. He said, okay, now let's kill everyone.
Yeah.
That's Aaron Yeager.
Yeah, that's Aaron Yeager.
Because he points to the ocean. He's like, but what about them? It's like, what about them, buddy? What are we going to do? And then apparently the answer is World War I. It becomes World War I all of a sudden.
And it's also fascinating that there's no landmass in the direction he's pointing. He doesn't know that there's them at this point in the story. He's not aware.
He wants there to be an enemy because otherwise he'd have to deal with some shit inside.
Yeah. He would have to turn back and be like, well, I've found a way to kill all my enemies before I even turned 18 years old. Now I gotta heal, and I don't want to heal because then I'll lose myself.
For there were no worlds to conquer.
Yeah, exactly. And which in a way leads to my second hot take. We're dealing with a lot of fascism in the United States right now.
We are? Yes, we are.
We are. What I have found disturbing is that people aren't talking enough about how insidious it is, how it kind of just took over without being it wasn't a loud blast exactly, like some people could say it was, but in so many ways it's just this awful creeping conversion that it's almost clandestinely sneaking into in all of our houses. Well, that same thing.
Gas leak.
It's like a gas leak. It's like an emotional. Well, in that case, it's like a societal gas leak. Well, Aaron is just like that. The seeds to his fascism were always there, but because we were busy looking at other things and living a different life and taking for granted the rules that existed in the beginning of the series, many of the things that he was doing went over our heads. So when he went full Jaegerist and became, fascist Aaron at the end, many of us found that surprising, and it shouldn't have been. We should have had the red flags, because the red flags were there, but we should have had our feelers up and detecting the red flags that this boy's mind is dangerous, and way more dangerous than it seems, and it's reflective of what we're going through now. And there have been many people in society who saw the signs, but it's like Rorschach and Watchmen. It's a bunch of people holding the end is nigh posters, and they're like being ignored every single second, treated like they're insane, when the seeds are planting one after another. Or when you look at the organization that planned Project 2025, they have been planning that since the 1970s.
Yeah,
that's
Nazis
a long
were early
game.
adopters of the internet in the early 80s. And
Yeah.
we go, they're all back. They've been slowly working toward this for a long time.
Yeah, this thing that we're dealing with, we're seeing the results of a long game strategy of oppression and bigotry and pain and suffering. Well, how you look at Aaron, I mean, what could possibly be more long game than putting yourself on your own temporal feedback loop? I don't see anything more long game than that.
At least in America right now, it almost feels like rightward drifts and fascism are like gravity. Like you have to, or like a rising tide, where it's like, okay, it's not insurmountable, but you have to do something, because by default it will start to envelop your, it's like being in that trash compactor in Star Wars that's going to fill up with water and crush you. Like, you got to do something, because status quo by definition will lose to the creep. Yes. The creep is coming, and it's coming faster every day.
Yeah, there's a fascism creep there. I guess that's the summation. There's a trauma creep in Attack on Titan. It's a trauma creep, and in the case of Aaron, there's a fascism creep. So Aaron, to sum up, I guess what I'm saying with my two takes, Aaron is what happens when trauma becomes policy. It goes from a traumatic event, a person who can't process that trauma in a healthy enough way, a society that does not incentivize them to process that trauma in a healthy way, either by flat out ignoring it or being totally unaware of what they're looking at, this being the characters in the show and us, the audience watching the show, and that turns into the trauma incubating itself inside of the mind of that person and just growing and growing and growing, and by the time people know that it's here, it's already too late. The rumbling has already started. The United States is going through a rumbling right now. That's what we're experiencing now, and that this isn't the first time something like this has happened. There have been many events throughout human history, not necessarily in the United States, but especially here, where one person's traumatically motivated mind has turned into them taking their misinterpretations of the human experience and turning it into government policies that have obliterated groups of people, whole organizations. I mean, we are dealing with it not only in this country, but we're dealing with it outside of the country in so many ways at the same time. And it's so like fast, just like the rumbling is.
A lot of dictators start out as in the group of a revolution, being that weird little quiet guy that everyone's like, he seems okay. Like, no, shoot that man, because when the leader dies, Stalin's gonna take charge, and then you have Stalinism.
Yes.
It's going to, he's quiet because he's waiting.
Yes.
And creeping.
Yeah.
You might call him a creep.
He's a creep. He's creepy. And Eren is creepy.
He is creepy, Jim Cells.
He's a very creepy character. Do not look at Attack on Titan. Look at Eren Yeager, especially after listening to this podcast, and think, yeah, there's a role model. I'm going to do that.
Yeah. If
Don't
you gotta
do that.
pick one, it's clearly Mikasa. I'll give you Mikasa.
Yeah, we'll give you that. Like, you went through some stuff.
Jim with a Mikasa back tat, I will respect that man.
Yeah, you went through some stuff. You're having trouble with your emotional tools. You're still learning that stuff. We get it. You know, if anything, try to be Armin. I mean, that's where I'm at. I mean, I'm selling Armin partially because I am an Armin. If we were to refer to these characters as archetypes for traumatic language, you know. But even then, speaking as an Armin stuff can go really, really wrong. It could go real wrong. You saw the episode. You saw what the Colossal Titan did to him.
Yeah, sure did.
Yeah, and then you saw what Eren, his supposed best friend, did to him after that. He didn't let him die. He turned him into the Colossal Titan. He didn't ask for that either, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also kind of an interesting, we don't have to have it because we're gone an hour anyway, but like an interesting conversation about consent in Attack on Titan, because a lot of this shit happens against everybody's will, and it's history altering things that they kind of have no choice in.
Yeah. Levi did not consent to being born into a bloodline of people who did not consent to be conditioned into being warriors. Mikasa's entire original trauma was based on people not consenting to her body. And Eren didn't consent to seeing his mom be killed, and he didn't consent to his future self making his mom die over and over again temporally. Then, I mean, come on, look at Armin.
I mean, if you send someone back in time to kill your mom, is that not consent? we don't know if we need to litigate this, but I'm like, okay, this is
well, if you don't consent to a decision that you made in the future, then no, it's not consent. It's a different version of yourself, even though it's yourself.
Okay.
You know, and even that, I just want to say this real quick. Eren is like, that whole time travel thing. Like, time travel plots frustrate me a little bit, but when Eren sent that Titan back in time to re-traumatize himself to make sure he became what he did, that's like if Back to the Future had Biff Tamlin as the main character instead of Marty McFly. Like, if Biff Tamlin decided, oh, I'm gonna hang out with Doc Brown and use the time machine to become a fascist way faster than I would have if Marty did it. That's what that is to me. Like, that's what that feels like. And yeah, it's again, it's a little frustrating to me, but it's also scary. Long story short, we're ending the podcast now. You shouldn't like Eren, but you should also don't like Eren.
Respect his abs.
Yes, respect his abs. Yes, he's cute. He's a bad person. Think of Attack on Titan as a way to deal with trauma. Goodbye.
Bernie 2028.
Bernie 2028.